Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Conversations in Pop Culture. I have with me Russell Rouge, who is a
Hello.
perfect, cut me off all right from the start. This is just like you. This is just what I would expect. And I'll explain
Good.
why. So, how this interview came about was there was a show a few months ago called Butch vs. Gore at Primetime Pro Wrestling. And Russell comes out to Oops, I Did It Again. And for those who don't know, Oops, I Did It Again just had its 20th anniversary, I want to say, in that entire album, sort of, and that's Britney. And so I think that's where we should start because somebody else also came out to that during that show. There's a little shade going on.
Gosh, that was so much fun. Jared Evans came out to Baby One More Time.
The nerve. The
The
nerve.
nerve, right? When that happened, I was like, oh my gosh, we have to milk this up because let's be real, I think plenty of people would develop a petty argument over something like that. And when we did that, the crowd milked it up. You've got arguably two of Britney's, if not the two biggest Britney songs, being the theme songs of two wrestlers at a queer wrestling show. You can't just be like, oh, whatever. Like, no. It was instrumental to our characters in coming together in that match. So I thought it was hilarious, but also, like, really cool.
I don't know if you've seen the replay, but during that time, because I was there and I sponsored the main event, for those who don't know, between Effie and Faye Jackson, that's my company, that was on that.
Yes.
Erica Lay's face, and I think Corny Mac, or is it Connie Mac?
Corinne Mink.
Cormac Mac. That's as close as I'm going to get.
Or is it AC Mac that you're thinking of?
No. AC Mac came out first, but he didn't have a reaction. AC Mac has plenty of reactions on his own without comment.
Oh, absolutely. He's very good.
Oh, he's great. He's the best shit talker in the business right now. In particular on the indies, there are very few people who can pull off what he does. But both of those people's reactions were priceless. You just see Erica Lay's face, and it's just like she's like her jaw is on the floor. Legitly, it was one of the funniest things. And she's looking around like this and like this. Oh, it was priceless. It was
Like
one of
when
the
I watched the replay and I saw that, it was like right when I entered the ring and I did like the Francine ECW like entrance on the rope, and she was like, oh my god. It was hilarious. She's such a sweetheart, and she's so funny too.
It's one of the funniest things.
That's the ring. You can't deny that at all.
Oh, it was priceless. Her reaction. Her reaction was the funniest thing in the entire match. But let's talk about that. So clearly, we're doing this because of Britney.
Of course, it's Britney Butch. Love her. What an icon.
So what was that like, even to come out to Britney and be at that show? Because that show was sort of announced, and there was also a lot of speculation, and Gator was on earlier on, and then Ariel Nix was on, and she was there as well. And there was a lot of up and down saying, can we do this show because of COVID-19? And so what was that like, and really coming into that, and it not even possibly being on, or was that not even in the back of your head?
That was not really in my mind, honestly. It was around that time, like the day before COVID was when Minnesota had its first COVID case announced. And so like a lot of states didn't really have COVID situations really publicly developing yet. And so I don't think anyone really thought that, I don't think anyone was thinking that wrestling was going to be affected by COVID at that point. Of course, we would find out the next weekend that it was very much a legitimate threat to, other shows, and Mania weekend got canceled for everyone, which was a huge bummer because we were all talking about how we were going to see each other at Tampa, and it was going to be a party and a good time, and we were just really living in the moment, and I'm really grateful for that. it kind of, in retrospect, I'm like, maybe we should have realized how serious this situation was. Um, but that wasn't really on our radar. As far as Britney goes and like kind of how my character came together and leading to Butch versus Gore, I had been using Britney as my theme music for just over a year at that point. It kind of came together. I don't know if you know this about me, but I wasn't initially Russell Rouge when I first started. I was initially a member of the book club, and my ring name was Dewey Decimal, which that gimmick was, it was basically a rib, and I had to kind of scratch and claw to dissociate myself from that. And coming into the business and being told basically you're a rookie, you do what you do, it was something that I just did with the hopes to get some experience and eventually do my own thing. Well, you can only do that for so long where you feel like you just don't really feel like yourself, and you feel like you're limiting yourself and what you can do. And when you don't feel confident in your gimmick, it's going to show in the ring. And basically that was happening to me. So, after a lot of fighting, a lot of screaming, I was like, I got to change things up. We got to, kill Dewey Decimal. When I finally turned heel, we basically did the whole Medusa gimmick and said Dewey Decimal is dead. And I threw all of my gear in the trash, which I have no regrets. And, then Russell Rouge came about, and we were like, well, how are we going to really set this character apart? And then I made a joke, and I was like, I'm going to use Oops, I Did It Again as my theme song. And the legend was born right there. So it got me massive heat the first time I came out to cut a promo. And, then, shortly after that, I had a match with Devon Monroe, who we also saw at Butch versus Gore. And we were both really green in that match. That match is on YouTube if anyone wants to watch it. But I think at Butch versus Gore, we got to show how much we both grew from that. And, Billy Dixon saw that match. And Billy Dixon said, like, we want to give you an opportunity. Like, we want to give both you and Devon an opportunity to really represent the Midwest. And Billy texted me around September asking me whether or not I was interested in coming out to DC. And I said, of course. And he asked me, well, how far do you live from Devon Monroe? Can y'all ride together? Lo and behold, Devon and I live 5 minutes away from each other. Like, I could literally drive to his apartment right now if I wanted to. Well, maybe parking would be awful because he lives in a very densely populated area. But he lives super close to me, and, we both ended up flying out there anyway. But, being able to have that relationship with Billy through social media, like, Billy has been there for me and checked up on me when no one else has. And for that, I'm really grateful.
And to even go a little bit further, because clearly this is Butch vs. Gore, it's an LBGTQ show. Gator stepped aside, let Lolo and Billy run it, and those two are in charge of the entire booking and a variety of promotional stuff. And Gator was still kind of handling some stuff also behind the scene. I don't want to just say that he wasn't involved, but clearly the two center stars were Lolo and Billy. So what was that like? Because unfortunately, and Billy cut that amazing promo. I'm not even gonna say the show's name because it's like half the alphabet, that show. And anybody who knows Primetime knows what I'm referring to.
Exactly.
It's like something, the Invitational, we're going to call it. And so he cut that amazing promo about all this sexual assault and all these problems going on in wrestling. And I'm dealing with that somewhat tomorrow. Just a teaser for those who are out there with somebody. I don't want to spoil it, or I'll spoil it. Lufisto is going to be on tomorrow in case anybody is watching tonight. So what was that like to come out to that? Because this is kind of a big deal to some degree.
Yeah, so I felt really comfortable with having a show ran by Billy and Lo. Lo and I met them at a seminar that we were both at in Chicago. And that was a few months before Billy had reached out to me. So Lolo and Billy both knew who I was. And to when I first saw Lolo, like when I got to the venue, I gave them a really big hug, and it was so great to see them. And, I felt so comfortable and trusted under both of them. And, like, when Billy cut that promo, a lot of what Billy said, it really resonated with my experience. I have dealt with a lot of harassment and other incidences with people coming at me or talking about my sexuality or saying that I should do certain things in the ring because of my sexuality and, even touching me in the locker room in an inappropriate way. And what Billy said, everything that Billy said in that promo was true. And it resonates with a lot of experiences that LGBTQ plus wrestlers have. And a lot of the times we don't get access to opportunities because people see us as weaker. People see us as having to work a lot more to show that we are credible and that we take wrestling seriously. And I don't think that's fair.
And so now you're at this show. The crowd was very excited. This is on IWTV.
Yeah.
And that's also a big thing about this, where, and I don't know how many shows you've been on, because I think you've only had like 40, 45 matches at the most.
We're about at that point, yeah.
And I don't know how many of those have been on IWTV, because my experience with IWTV is relatively new. I'm about 18 months into experiencing that company, and it's been amazing. I think they do a great job. Obviously, not so much in the last 2 months, but that's not their fault. But nonetheless, in all seriousness, that was fought for very hard by Primetime. That just to give insight, and I don't think Gator or Lolo is going to mind too much if I say this, but that was fought for really hard, and that was a big point. So what was that like? That expands the audience dramatically by at least 10, if not 20 fold.
I mean, anyone saw that the show was trending nationwide on Twitter. Like, and if you didn't see that and you follow indie
I was
wrestling,
there, so I didn't see it, but I digress.
That's a good point. But, if you follow indie wrestling and you follow indie wrestling on Twitter and you didn't see that, well, unfortunately, you're just not paying attention. I know that's like really blunt, but not many indie shows get to trend on a national level on Twitter. It shows that the work that all the talent, all of Primetime staff put into put that show together, it sent a very strong message. And to be a part of that, there's no words. It was just such an amazing experience.
And also gave you a bigger platform. And it gave a lot of people a bigger platform where I didn't know who you were before Butch vs. Gore. I didn't know who Devin Monroe was either. And I don't think that that's necessarily ignorance. It's just I didn't know half the card. And I think a lot of people didn't know half the card. And Billy put it a really good way. And he said, by the end of this, you're going to have 20 new favorite wrestlers. And I think that's the way, because a lot of that card was not known by the primetime audience. And the 6 shows they did before, 5 or 6 shows they did before, a lot of new people were wrestling. So what was that like for you? Because you got a whole new bunch of people that you were introduced to.
Yeah.
Fans.
Primetime is, one thing I love about Primetime is that they're committed to having a diverse roster. And I think it's so important for wrestling fans to see diversity in the ring and to have multiple performers that they feel that they can relate to. I feel like that's missing in a lot of other promotions. And, in the Midwest, even though the Midwest is seen as progressive, there's not many promotions that really tend to value diversity.
There's one or two. There's really only one or two, and Freelance is one of them.
Freelance is one of them, especially. First is another. But, the Midwestern wrestling scene is also not as connected to the overall indie scene as promotions are on either the East or the West Coast. And, that's something that I would very much like to see change. I was not expecting my Twitter to be blowing up for days after Butch versus Gore, but it was. To hear stories about like how people like admired my work and how they felt like they could relate to me in some ways. I wasn't used to that, but I'm not gonna lie, it felt really good. And to know that people were taking me credibly both as a talent and as a wrestler, I think was something that I felt like I had been missing for quite a while. And it felt really validating to have that experience.
Well, to be honest, I thought you did a great job, but you're a heel. So
I know.
Me booing you is a good thing.
It is very much a good thing, and I'm not saying that boos are bad. I just think a lot of the times queer talent aren't given the platform or the opportunity to really showcase how they can wrestle. And a lot of the wrestlers that, I grew up respecting and idolizing, they were wrestlers before anything else. Like,
they weren't entertainers they weren't entertainers versus wrestling. And one of the things that you mentioned that your Twitter was blown up is that, what was that like? Because that's a very different jump in which that, we see the problem and we see it in WWE and we see it in other areas and even in celebrities sometimes. And we see it after people sometimes do heroic things as well, is that all of a sudden, your Twitter builds up and you don't know how to handle that. That's a very different game. I've had a few tweets blow up in a positive way. Thank you, Lana, for that. Lana made one of my tweets like 150,000, things, and a lot of people were supportive and were like, "Oh, that's great," and it was kind of freaking me out a little bit. And so, what was that like? Because that's a very new thing, and I would imagine it's new for you because that probably doesn't happen that often.
No, it like doesn't, and it was really cool to have like in a way like a sense of belonging and feeling like you're a part of like a greater community. That was something that I didn't really feel like I had nearly as strong of a sense of beforehand.
Changed the game.
What was that?
It changed the game for you.
It definitely changed the game. Like, it brought me, basically what it did was it exposed me to a wider variety of people. And that is huge. And to not be able just to have that opportunity, but to make the most out of it, I think was something that I knew going into it that I had to do. Like, regardless of whether or not I was going to be in the final two of the scramble, or as we saw that I went out first, I knew that I had to go out there, give it everything that I had, and make an impression with the crowd. And I think that everyone did that in the scramble, which in a scramble match is super, super hard. So that should go to speak on the talent of everybody involved in that scramble. Like, honestly, I look back at it and I'm like, that is probably one of the best scramble matches that I have seen in such a long time. And I could just say that I was a part of that. So, ooh, fucking yeah. Oh, I just swore.
You can say whatever you want. It's the internet.
Sorry.
So, to talk about that, I didn't think that you made the impression in the first part of that match. I think that the impression came after you got eliminated and you did something very heelish. That's where it was impressionable, and I thought that was a very nice touch. Because that is not necessarily wrestling so much, but it's definitely the bad guy part of wrestling.
Yeah.
And then as Razor Ramon says, good, bad guys last is pretty much what he says. And that's kind of what I got out of that. So I thought that was great. I really did. I thought it was a nice touch.
Like, it was really fun how the whole story of the match kind of came together. Like, at the end of the day, what we all wanted to do was we were just like, okay, we need to like make sure that everyone gets to shine and that everyone gets to do something that makes them stand out. And, at the end of the day, like, I got to do a spot that not many people get to do in a scramble. Like, when people get eliminated in a scramble, they usually just go backstage and, cry and sob that they didn't get to win, yada, yada, yada. I didn't get to do that because I'm a badass bitch. But it was really cool to do something different and be able to be like, you thought it was out? Think again, honey boo boo, because I'm certainly still here.
Oh, you were hated for that.
Oh, yeah.
It was
Like,
great. It was great.
hate me all you want to.
So now let's jump a little bit forward, and I know it's slightly out of context here as
Yeah.
far as the wrestling world, but what was WrestleMania week gonna look like for you? Because a lot of stuff was going down. I would say it was supposed to be the most diverse week or 6 days leading up to it.
Hmm.
Obviously, things got canceled. COVID-19 hit, and so I'm very curious what that was supposed to be like for you.
Yeah, so I kind of had a booking come up like last minute in like February that hadn't been announced yet. I was still gonna go to some other shows to support the talent that I was friends with and, still network with people because at the end of the day, I think that's the biggest part for an indie talent is in addition to if you're working a ton of shows and you get like massive paydays, you're networking with all these other people and you're showing that you take indie wrestling seriously. So I was gonna stay with a couple other wrestlers down there, and I was super excited for everything. And then COVID-19 decided that it was gonna ruin everybody's plans. But I'm at the same time, I'm really glad that indie wrestling took COVID seriously, and let talent stay home because we don't need to exacerbate this situation and make it even worse. Like I think running a show right now even is still at the indie level where they can't afford to take all these precautions is really irresponsible. And I don't think a payday of, whatever your pay is and a handshake is worth risking COVID. We already risk it enough when we go to the damn grocery store, you know?
So, what show were you supposed to be on? Because I think you could say that, right?
I'm not gonna say it just because I think surprises. I don't
Fair
want
enough,
things
fair
that
enough.
make
But
future.
I'm going to
But
take a leap of faith here and assume you're going to be at certain shows. Because one of the things that was probably the biggest disappointment for a lot of indie fans is Effie's Big Gay Brunch not happening.
yeah,
And I think that thing stung a lot more than a lot of other things. And there was some good stuff other, like Joey Janela's Spring Break is
yeah.
always good, and I think it was supposed to be the fourth one. And then Impact was supposed to do like old school Impact,
Mm.
and that was going to be cool. I don't know if that was going to happen down in Florida or if
I
that
think
was,
it was, if
but
I remember correctly.
which would have been great because that's kind of their old stomping ground. But I'm assuming you're going to be at Effie's Big Gay Brunch.
I actually was not booked for Effie's show.
Oh, as a fan, I'm talking.
Oh, as a fan, I told Effie at Butch versus Gore that I actually met Effie for the first time at Butch versus Gore.
What was that like? Let's start there.
You know, Effie's a big star, but he doesn't come across that way in person. Like, he comes across as super, super genuine. And, I was really pleasantly, like, I don't want to say surprised because, like, I think, Effie is a very nice person, but, like, it's really cool to see someone who you respect be able to be so approachable and relatable, and having that experience was really cool. He like came up to me and said that he really liked my gear, and funny thing happened. He was watching the scramble backstage, and he was just like, "You already got eliminated," and I'm like, "This ain't it," and he was just like, "Good," and I was just like, "You'll just have to see," So, Effie was just super approachable, and meeting him was super cool. And then I asked him, like, I'd love to like come and help you out with anything you need at your event, and he was like, you should come. So, we'll see what happens in the future, but he's a really cool person, and I'm really glad that our paths crossed.
Because you know the Effie story with me and Butch vs. Gore. So at that invitational show that happened about a month before, I said to Effie, if I sponsor this, because we were talking, because I interviewed Effie for my main podcast, and then I said, if I sponsor it, he said, oh yeah, I'll wear your shirt out to it. And so I actually sent him a shirt, not knowing if he was going to do it, thought he was going to do it. Lolo, Billy, Gator didn't know at all. They knew nothing about this. And then I brought Effie another shirt, purposely, thinking that, okay, this could happen, this could not happen. I was sponsoring it anyway. I didn't really care. It's good publicity for me. And nobody wanted to sponsor anything else in that show. And I was a little bit shocked, but that's a different discussion. And so then he comes out, and you just see my logo, and I'm like, oh shit, and Lolo was
really
cool.
A man of his word.
Yeah, it was great, but it's this idea that Effie is very humble. He's very nice. He's just because he's reached the level of stardom and he's gotten a lot of attention, and he's very well respected. He's been in game-changing wrestling and all that stuff, and he's been in some death matches, and then he could do some comedy stuff. That Faye Jackson comedy stuff was great. And I think that really helped to solidify Butch vs. Gore in many ways.
Yeah.
Showing that you can wrestle, but you can do comedy in the middle of a match.
They're both so talented, and they're both so nice. Like, Faye is a badass, but she is so sweet. And she's also just so much fun to watch, and I have nothing but good things to say about both of them. I really do.
I don't know Faye as well as I know Effie. And the reason why I bring up Effie, and I think this relates to you, Effie said something, because we were talking about how some characters do the gay character when they're not gay, and they have some element of metrosexual element to it, and you know what is, it's okay. I mean, I'm thinking of a certain wrestler in New Japan for a while. I'm not going to say his name, but I think anybody can figure it out.
Yeah.
I think when Chris Daniels and Kazarian did the Appletini thing, I don't think that was offensive at all in any which way. I just thought they were just being sort of toolish, purposely. And I kind of like the gimmick with the addiction and that stuff. But I digress right there. One of the things, though, that Effie said to me was that you have to be authentic. And that after a while, people can buy something for 3 months, but they will catch on if it's not really you and you're not authentic. And I think that's kind of what happened with your Dewey Decimal character, is that clearly that authenticity was disappearing. And that's not saying that, you have a character like the Boogeyman in WWE, for instance. Unless you fully embrace that can't work. The reason why that character works, or even Kane with the mask works, because it's fully embraced.
Yeah.
But that's why I bring this up, because I think that really summarizes it perfectly of why that character didn't work and why Russell Rouge is working.
I think also, getting back to that point, I think there's a difference as well between portraying a character of a marginalized community that you are not a part of. That there's a difference between that and portraying a character that isn't necessarily yourself. Now, some characters may be considered to be gay, and maybe they're just really metrosexual. And I think that, there's a difference between not liking a character because of potentially internalized misogyny and not liking someone's character because they're essentially exploiting the queer community for profit. That I don't necessarily feel comfortable with. And I think that there needs to be a discussion on those kinds of characters. But that's all I'll say about that for now, because I could write a whole thesis about that. And I would rather not right now, because I've got other things in my life to not be stressed about.
And clearly we're in a stressful time with wrestling. I mean, there's
Oh,
no doubt about that.
yeah.
I mean, I don't know when your last show was, but the last thing that I actually pretty much watched was WrestleMania and then Money in the Bank, and I haven't watched any wrestling in between because I just can't deal with it.
I mean,
I've also
my last show was Butch versus Gore that I was at, and I was hoping to wrestle the following weekend, but the shows that I was going to go to, they got canceled, and rightfully so. But I mean, I've still watched the pay-per-views and I've kept up with it. Um, but I do miss it, and I miss it a lot. I miss the crowds, I miss the fans. I don't miss taking wild bumps, but you know.
so to talk about that a little bit because clearly, and I'm curious, and we're going to start talking about COVID a little bit, but how do you think that like companies like AEW and even WWE are handling this without crowds? Because sometimes they're having fun with it, but also sometimes there's some awkward components to it as well. And
hmm
we can see it and the body language. You know, I recognize people's body language, and I'm sure you recognize it even more than me as a wrestler, especially in particular with wrestling. So, how do you think they've been handling it, and how do you think that it's going for them? Because it's getting a little bit annoying at this point after like 12 weeks of this, give or take.
I wouldn't necessarily say. I think for some people, it's awkward not having a crowd because they miss that interaction. And for some people, that's a huge part of wrestling is feeding off of the crowd and using the crowd to really shape the story that you're telling. At the same time, we wrestle a lot of matches like when we train without a crowd at all. Sometimes it'll just be our peers that we train with. And so, you know, doing that for practice, I think, would prepare a lot of people for situations like this. I think, obviously, the difference is, how the difference is we don't necessarily think about bringing the viewers at home in when we have those practice matches. And that's a new element that basically these performers at major promotions are trying to learn on the fly, and they're trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work. Like, do you actually want to look into the hard cam? And things, they're going to be different. And, I wouldn't say that the wrestling is boring, but it's different. And I think wrestlers are just trying to really figure out what works. And sometimes that's going to be hit and miss, and that's okay. I've done plenty of things that are hit and miss, and, I don't hold too much judgment on myself for that. And I wouldn't want to hold judgment against another worker for experimenting with something. And, then they realize that it doesn't work, and then they try something else that does work. Like, it's really just a part of the business. And we see that experimentation a lot with wrestlers. Like, they'll try like a new signature move or a new slogan, and then it'll get axed, shortly after. And a lot of wrestling is, you know, experimentation. And I think that's what house shows have been used for a lot in the past. And obviously they can't run house shows anymore. So they're doing a lot more of this in front of everyone, in front of this large platform. And you have to commend them and, give them a huge pat on the back for that. Maybe not a literal pat on the back right now because of COVID, but, I think a metaphorical, social distance pat on the back will do.
So to talk about that experimentation, and I've been following WWE a lot more than AEW. But
hmm
one of the things they've been doing that's so interesting is all these cinematic type matches. I mean, we got AJ Styles versus The Undertaker, and that thing was lit.
It was
To put
so good. So good.
and then the Firefly Funhouse promo. It wasn't a match; it's a promo.
I know, but it was still like
It was
so
brilliant.
loved it.
NWO John Cena. Come on, tell me you don't want to see that.
In anyone's dream world, I feel like that would have been like super cool. Or just like a newer generation of the New World Order, I think would be really tight. Like, especially like in the late '90s, you had like the Latino World Order, you had the Blue World Order, you had the Wolfpack, you had NWO Japan. Like, the NWO inspired and laid the groundwork for a modern faction in professional wrestling. And you can't take away its legacy, but it would be cool to see like a modern day reincarnation.
It would have been great. And that match, if they did the Hall of Fame like 2 nights before and then they did that stuff, would have been so good. And references into that. I mean, because the NWO went into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
That this year. So pretty sweet reference and really brilliant. And definitely John Cena and Bray Wyatt killed it on that.
Oh, yeah.
Really brilliant. And I think Bray Wyatt has been so underrated in so many ways, and I think Cena put Bray Wyatt over in that match and redeemed himself from like 7 years before that WrestleMania disaster between the two.
It was like a really cool way to just bring the story full circle, and I think a lot of people did underestimate Bray Wyatt, but I think his character is one of the best things in wrestling right now, and you have to give him some credit for, not just some credit, a lot of credit for doing what he's doing and doing it so well. Like, not everyone can do a character like that. So, props.
And then the other match I want to talk about, and we might get into some homicide here, was Money in the Bank.
Now, Money in the Bank was really...
That was bizarre.
From the other matches, but I still think it was really well put together. I loved how they had like both the men and the women come together and like do their little spiel. I feel like they always tease intergender wrestling, like how they did with like Shayna and Ray. I don't think I'm the only person that says I would love to see intergender wrestling back in WWE. I know that it's probably difficult considering the circumstances, but seeing that interaction was cool. Seeing the different stories that were told along the way, like who would have thought that AJ Styles and Daniel Bryan would have been fighting in Mr. McMahon's office? That is like a dream of an early 2000s indie wrestling fan. Like, that was really cool. All the cameos were cool. Like, I wasn't expecting to see Brother Love, for example. That was wild. Poor Dana Brooke falling. And like I was like so happy when she grabbed the Money in the Bank briefcase. Like, I love Dana Brooke. I think that she has grown so much as a wrestler. And I was like, are they really going to give her the briefcase? Like, she might be the underdog, but it would have been such a cool story to tell. And like when Carmella won, Carmella was the underdog. And, only to find out that that was just a decor briefcase in a meeting room was like, but seeing Asuka win and that finish was real. Both finishes for the men and women's Money in the Bank ladder match were different. Like having Nia fall on the Lacey and then having AJ drop the briefcase into Otis's hands. Like, those aren't finishes that I would have thought of personally. It just shows the magic of the producers or the talent, whoever, suggested the finish. Like, you have to be brilliant to think out of the box. And that's exactly what they did.
And what I really enjoyed is that Baron Corbin threw over Rey Mysterio over the area that they were fighting in. It looked like he murdered Rey.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Aleister Black also went over. And I thought that was great because I'm on Twitter and a bunch of us were commenting saying, oh my God, Rey Mysterio just died. Rest in peace, Rey Mysterio. Like, and obviously we all knew that it wasn't serious, but it was that idea that like it was pretty intense. It was a pretty intense moment.
Like, it just goes to show that like, you can take what you have, and even with what you have is non-traditional, you can still make magic and tell really cool stories with it. And that, I think, with that and like some of the other spots in the match, like Asuka, doing her little dance and then cross-bodying on everybody. Like, you obviously have Rey and Aleister being thrown over. What happened with the Money in the Bank match basically was they took advantage of that environment, and they were just like, we don't care if this is not traditional. We're still going to use everything that we have to tell a really cool story. And I think that they very much succeeded with that. And I was very entertained watching it. And personally, if I had a chance to do anything like that, you best believe I would sign up right away because, shoot, it'd be fun.
It just goes to show you that when people's backs are put up against the wall, creativity typically emerges. When people are put in really tough situations, they become very, very creative.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm one of those people that if you put my back up against the wall, one of two things happens. Either rage comes out or I become very creative to deal with the problem. And so I think that's kind of where we're going a little bit because this is a direct result of COVID-19. And so I'm very curious on your end, because we've been talking a bunch of bookings that got canceled, and I have an idea how it's affected you as far as wrestling goes, but I'm curious where you think it's going. And I know that it's not a pleasant path to go down, but I'm curious where you think we're going with entertainment and wrestling and things kind of happening. Because I hate to say it this way, but entertainment is the last sector that's going to be reopened. I don't think I'm making a ridiculous statement here. I mean, I'm in the con world, and I wasn't going to San Diego Comic Con, but that thing got canceled, and a lot of things are affected in the comic world where I'm from and what I participate in the most. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of, I guess, a sign on the wall, and that's in July, and that's 50 days away. I want to give or take 50 days away. And so kind of just want to get your thoughts on that because you probably have a better sense because you're closer to it.
Yeah. So from what I'm seeing, both in wrestling and outside of it, like I've had shows canceled up until July now. And in Minnesota, we're not going to peak until July. And so we're not going to have shows, I don't think, until at least September or October. And I worry that that's going to be pushed out even more because I think people are starting to get really tired of social distancing.
So I hate to interrupt you because I think this is really important. So right now, I mean, I'm just curious about this. Where is it looking like that it could even be a possibility in September and October? And even if it is perfectly fine to go, how do you think fans are going to react to it? Because I also want to throw that into the mix also because there is a comfort level, not just for wrestlers, but for fans. Because, I mean, you in the ring are pretty close to each other, but then you can sort of social distance in a locker room. But we as the fans... I mean, yes, and technically yes and no, I guess. You could social distance somewhat in the locker room, but there's more space probably in the locker room and in the back than there is out in the crowd.
I mean, some venues are like really small. Like in Eagles Club, for example, one venue that I worked at, our locker room, like there's no possible way that you could social distance in there. It probably was the size of like an 8.5 by like 8 bedroom, so like super small, super tight. So that like some locker rooms, they just don't have that flexibility. I think it's a lot of pressure to expect that every single fan's going to wear a mask, and it's a lot of pressure to have to turn people away because they're not wearing a mask. You're in a closed area that has a lot of like recurring circulation, so things are going around. And at indie shows, as you know, the crowds can get very intimate. So, I think there's a lot of pressure from all stakeholders involved, and they're going to be interacting with talent, at intermission and beforehand, and that's really scary. And if they come to the ring and touch it, well, how is that going to spread? And like, I know of indie shows that have happened since COVID, and like whether it's closed set or like to an open audience, but that's not something that I personally am comfortable participating in, nor is it something that I feel like a lot of other talent are comfortable doing. And I'm okay with that, you know? Like, I think at the end of the day, we have to look out for the safety of each other. And considering how so many people can have COVID and be asymptomatic, like, it does not feel right to put myself in a situation where I could A, contract it, or B, unknowingly pass it to other people, whether it's talent or fans or anyone really.
And so, even going off of that, because what do you think is the, I guess, solution, or going further out? Because I kind of alluded to it, where you said that things are looking more like September, October. I mean, I had Gary J on, who's from St. Louis Anarchy, and he was one of the first people I had on in March. He said we were looking at July and March, and clearly, and this isn't a stab at him. I like Gary; he's a Facebook friend, and interviewed twice, probably going to get him on a third time sooner rather than later. And he said July is the earliest, and that was being optimistic. And I think the landscape has changed.
Oh, it very much has.
And I think and look, maybe it's my ignorance, and I don't know how you feel, but I thought COVID was going to be 2-3 weeks lockdown.
Well, I think a lot of people felt that, like we weren't expecting it to be this long. Like a lot of the talent was like, oh, we're not going to wrestle for a month or two. By May or June, we're all going to be back in a ring. We're all going to see each other again. We're going to be comfortable and safe at the airport. Nah, fam, it didn't work like that. And it sucks, but you can't always predict what's going to happen with a pandemic, And I think it's a very humbling experience for a lot of us.
And so even with that, and it's a humbling experience for America and the world in many ways. I don't think it's just a wrestling thing. We're all as humanity saying, we next time we go to the barbershop, no, please, you go first. I'm pretty sure we're all going to come out of this a little bit nicer. But I am curious what you think is going to be put in place, because things are changing. I'm asking all my comic friends, and I've been doing a lot of indie comic people on this show, and voice actors and others. And I've been asking them, saying, hey, how are the cons going to change? And I guess I'm modifying the question, saying, how do you think wrestling shows are going to change? Because clearly changes occur.
Yeah, so what I see happening is that if venues open, which a lot of them are going to be like bars or Eagles clubs, or even if it's like a public school setting, like there's talks about public schools not having in-person classes for all of first semester. So that is a very big concern. And even when like bars and restaurants open, they're going to want to wait like 30 or 60 days most likely. I know that one promoter told me that the venue that they had lined up for shows, they told him that our business needs to be open to the general public with no restrictions for 60 days before we allow you to run shows out of here. And I think that's a very realistic expectation, because you're bringing in like a different set of clientele, and also like if you're or a different set of clientele, different set of people to the venue, and obviously with people coming in from all over the country, you don't know what COVID's going to be like in one region compared to the other. And so you have to be precautious about everything. So I don't see many shows running with like social distancing guidelines, because they're not going to be profitable. And I feel like if a promoter were to run a show with social distancing guidelines, only let like 40 or 50 fans total like show up to the building and just charge like an upsale of tickets, like either people wouldn't buy the tickets, or there would be a ton of controversy, because people would feel like others are trying to profit off of COVID-19, which is quite frankly, that like to do that would not make me comfortable. So I think that when wrestling returns, it's going to have to be pretty similar to how it was. And that's going to take a while for that to be a realistic option. It's not going to happen overnight. Like, yeah, we want to wrestle, but we want to wrestle in a safe way. And no promoter is going to hold a show that's purposely not going to be profitable.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't even think I think to take it even a step further, it has to be okay for the wrestlers. It has to be okay for the fans. And it also has to be okay for whatever bar staff are there, because a lot of these
Oh,
shows are in
yeah.
bar staff, and also it's like the other thing that I think is something that people have to realize and think about is a lot of these promotions are going to sort of be on their last legs, or not a lot, but a few are going to be on their last legs. I should correct myself, and I should be a bit more optimistic. Is what I should be. But definitely some promotions are going to be beat up. Are going to definitely have debt, and other promotions aren't coming back, along with other wrestlers aren't coming back.
Yeah.
After this thing's over, and so I think that in that way as well, and I think that a lot of people are going to be kind of shocked when this thing clears and the dust settles and say, oh my God, my favorite wrestler is not back, or whatever happened to so and so. You know, they might have gotten, I don't want to say a real job, but they might have gotten a full-time job versus a part-time job, and wrestling is their other part-time job that makes a whole job, if that makes any sense.
Oh, it absolutely does, because I see it happen, like I'm very lucky to have my bachelor's degree and have a career. Some wrestlers are probably going to start pursuing that, and they may find a career where they're happy in. And not to say that I'm not happy in my career, because I love my career. But they may realize that wrestling is no longer for them after this. And I think that's a totally okay decision to make. I think what I worry the most about is wrestling schools right now. We've seen wrestling schools close throughout the pandemic because basically they're paying rent on a warehouse or wherever their facility is located, and they're not bringing any revenue in because there's no training going on right now. And so, I worry about wrestlers being able to go back in once things open up and freshen up on things. I worry about the future pipeline of talent that's able to be developed. And it's a very volatile time. I don't want to say it's scary because it is, nerve-wracking a little bit, but I think that it's also really great that we have this wrestling community, and, that I'm glad that I'm still able to get a little satisfaction from that and to be able to continue those friendships. That makes this whole thing so much easier.
And now I want to clarify, and hopefully you can answer the question. You're not leaving so quickly, right?
No, I'm not. Even though I got into grad school, I'm still planning to wrestle when I get back, obviously. So, and I was thinking about grad school pre-COVID. I just am a nerd and I love to learn, so people have to deal with that. But I definitely will be sticking around unless something wild happens, and knock on wood that doesn't happen.
And so we're going to wrap up there, but I do want to give you an opportunity to promote yourself. You got a Pro Wrestling Tees or a Big Cartel, I think it is. It's one of those two.
I'm just on Pro Wrestling Tees right now. The Pro Wrestling Tees at Russell Rouge. That's 2 S's, 2 L's. A lot of people get it wrong. Dealing with that all my life. I'm on Instagram at Russell Rouge and Twitter at It's Russell Rouge. And you can find me on Facebook too, I guess.
Great. There's no excuse anymore. Go buy his t-shirt, please. Wrestlers need your money more than ever right now because they're not wrestling. If you like a wrestler, you're enjoying a wrestler, you like what they do, I don't really care who you like, if it's a heel, a face, an anti-hero, it doesn't matter to me. If you like what they do, definitely go support them. And if right now you're in monetary problems and you can't afford to buy somebody's t-shirt, one of the things that you can do, unless you have no electricity, internet, is follow them on social media. He's got an Instagram, he's got a Twitter, he's got a Facebook, he's got Pro Wrestling Tees. You could just favorite that. Did I miss one?
No.
Well, perfect. So thank you for being on. I really appreciate it because I wanted to do this, and Britney came up, and I just saw it on Twitter, and that's how this thing started. And I'm like, oh, he came out to Britney. Let me check this out.
Yes. This was really fun. Thank you for having me, and we'll have to do this again sometime.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm super stoked. You're my fourth one this week. Just so everybody knows, tomorrow I am doing an indie comic writer slash creator at 3 o'clock. And then at 6 o'clock, I am doing Lufisto. And just to give a sneak preview, just go on Twitter and look up Lufisto. And you'll understand why we're doing it. And I'm going to leave it at that because it's going to be very interesting and could be controversial, and it's going to be a good one. So I recommend everybody to go check that one out and definitely watch it here, hear it, and wherever this is posted, pretty much it's out there. So that's where we're going to end.
Take care.